Welcome to Small Arms Solutions. Roughly 2 years ago, we did a video. It was a comparison between the Knights Armament SR-25 and the LM8 MWS. At that time, I didn't have an example of the current production SR-25 rifle, so I used my personal SR-25, which I bought in 1995 from Gene Stoner at the SHOT Show in 1995. Now, that was the original, if you want to, I don't want to say prototype, but that was the original production model. The rifle had just come out probably around 93, 94, and at that time it was still very, very new. It was developed by Gene Stoner along with Reed Knight. Gene Stoner had gone to work for Knights Armament, where his whole purpose was to bring back his AR-10, and he had always thought that was an advanced design. In fact, even Aberdeen did too, the people who tested the rifle, but in their infinite wisdom, they decided to go with the M14 instead of the AR-10, which was far more advanced. And as far as the United States was concerned, the AR-10 was put in the scrap heap of Ordnance Corps. And back then, during the testing, it was noted that the AR-10 was unusually accurate for a semi-automatic rifle. In fact, one of the Armament executives noticed that written in a notebook of the tester at Aberdeen, but of course that didn't find its way into the final report because they wanted to protect their homegrown M14. So when Gene Stoner went to work for Knights, his whole sole purpose was to bring back his AR-10. But what he wanted to do is he wanted to take the advancements that were made with the M16A2 and combine them with his AR-10 design. And he wanted to have parts compatibility as well for logistical reasons, so he could make as many parts compatible with the M16A2 and the SR-25 as possible. The rifle he designed was called the SR-25. SR, Stoner Rifle, and 25. You take the 10 from AR-10 and the 15 from AR-15, you get 25, so there you go. So the version that I had to show was the exact rifle that was manufactured in 1995. I had a couple of enhancements. I had, instead of the standard fiberglass handguard, I had a URX on there, and I had a PRS stock on there instead of a standard mil-spec type stock. But, I got called out. I got called out by several viewers, and actually by Knights as well, that, hey, that wasn't a fair comparison because, you're comparing a 1995 gun to a 2015 gun or 2016 gun, whatever it was at the time that I did it. But again, I was limited. However, since I have made contact with some people at Knights Armament, and now I'm able to do a head-on comparison between the latest SR-25 E2 and the current production LMT rifle, LM8 MWS rifle. The only really difference is there is a new generation of the LMT rifle out that has the ambidextrous bolt catch. But other than that, this stuff is identical. So I'm going to give you a brief overview of the LMT as well. The LMT was designed in the early 2000s. It was a progression of the MRP system, which was the monolithic rail platform, which was a one-piece upper receiver with removable barrels. By removing two bolts, you're able to swap out different barrel lengths and different calibers. They scaled it up to an AR-10 type rifle. The lower receiver, rather than LMT design their own lower receiver, they basically licensed the lower receiver from the SR-25. So it's basically the same lower receiver, a few changes, obviously, but it was basically the same lower receiver. The upper receiver, what was really the major deal, you started off with a single forging of 775 aircraft aluminum, and it was all machined down, so you had a monolithic rail. Now, there's also a connection between LMT and Knights. LMT makes many components for Knights. So there's a lot of similarities. You'll see the bolt carrier groups are nearly identical, with some very, very minor changes on the carrier. The bolts are a little bit different, which we're going to take a look at. But so when the rifle was designed, it was designed by Carl Lewis to use a Knights lower receiver. At the same time this was all going on to build the 308 rifle, there was also an emergency contract that came up from the British government for a sharpshooter rifle. And that was where the L129 came on. And that was LMT's first really major military breakthrough with the British government. So the L129 was released first, and then came out the commercial version. So this rifle has gone on to be extremely successful for LMT. By changing out the barrels, we can go anywhere from a 13.5 inch to a 16 to an 18 to a 20 inch 7.62 or 308 barrel. He has chrome line barrels for good hard military use. He has stainless steel for other use. And he also has different calibers. As long as the cartridge was based off of a 308 parent case, you're able to have a 338 Federal, 243, 260 Remington, and 6.5 Creedmoor. There's another one in there too. I'm trying to 7mm 08, I think. 7mm 08 was the other one. So you have all that flexibility to swap out barrels. So that was a major difference as well. So for as far as the fire control groups and whatnot, we're going to go over those side by side, but that's just to give you an idea of where they came from. Now, looking at the Knights, this is a direct descendant not only from the original SR-25, but to the M110 SAS rifle as well. This rifle here has seen U.S. military service. We're going to be doing a separate video on the M110, but this was a major game changer for as far as the way sniping was looked at in the U.S. military. So the technology that you see on here, the rifle here, the SR-15E2, takes this technology and improves upon it as well. And I will mention about this rifle here, what you see here is the direct U.S. government rifle. There's been over 30 engineering change orders that Knights Armament has tried to get through to the U.S. Army to improve the rifle, but they couldn't get them through. The rifle you're seeing here has all those changes and improvements. So in reality, most of the changes are mechanical. This is pretty much a different rifle for as far as many of the internal components. For as far as I'm being enhanced. So I think what we're going to do right now is we're going to go immediately side by side here and talk about some of the differences. What we're going to do is we're going to talk about one gun and then the other and go back from all those components. So starting with the barrels, Knights uses a 5R barrel. 5R barrel was designed to optimize the use of the heavier M118, M118LR barrels. Now, the barrel is stainless steel type barrel. It is not chrome plated. Now, for military use, for an assault rifle, you would want chrome plating. It significantly increases the life of the barrel. However, for a sniper rifle, that chrome plating can affect the way the lands and grooves are, and it can affect accuracy. So that's something that you don't want to do with a sniper type barrel. So we also have the 7.62 QD flash hider on here, which also works with the sound suppressor provided by Knights Armament as well. Now, the barrel is a 1 in 10 inch. Now we look at the LMT. What I have on here, this is a Silencer Co. for my Silencer Co. Sound suppressor muzzle brake. The military version would come with a war comp, or the standard one would come with a 7.62 compensator similar to that of the M16A2. The barrel we have on here is chrome moly vanadium. It's also a 1 in 10 inch twist. This particular barrel is a 20 inch barrel. And again, these are available in 13.5, 16, 18, and 20 inch. Direct gas systems, both are direct gas systems. However, the gas system on the Knights is an improved gas system which they have designed themselves. Basically what we have, instead of having a standard gas block where the gas tube slides right in and is pinned in place, there is ability for gas to leak outside of that gas tube because, again, you have a gas tube that's it's not particularly sealed. It slides right into the gas block, and then you have ways for gas to get around and come out of the gas block. What we have here, the gas tube forms more of a bell at the end where it goes into the gas block. So you have that bell which slides onto an opening on the gas block. And then you have a screw that comes into the back. It's like a locking washer that seals that right up. So it gives you a complete seal. So there's no way to leak gas. It also, this is pinned in place on the LMT versus the Knights, which is held on by, it looks like a miniature castle nut, which rotates on and it locks, and it's torqued and it locks the gas block in place. So, does it make that much of a difference? Don't know, because I've never seen a problem with any of the other systems as well. But you can definitely tell from a mechanical standpoint how you are going to be eliminating potential gas loss from the gas block. Now we look at the upper receivers. On the LMT, we have the one-piece upper receiver, continuous 1913 rail. This particular version is what's referred to as the LM8 or slick side, which we have removable segments, rail panel segments that are held in place by screws, different lengths of rail segments, and then these grippers here just protect the receiver and protect the shooter's hand. Over here we have M-LOK. This is M-LOK URX. This is not a one-piece receiver. This is a separate handguard. But this is URX, both which, of course, are free-floating. Both have continuous 1913 rail. This is two. I mean, obviously, you have the rail on top of the URX plus the upper receiver. This here is continuous. Backup sights. We both have backup sights. We have the LMT-produced backup sight, and we have the Knights backup. Major difference is, obviously, the LMT is much larger. And to adjust the front sight post on the LMT, this is identical to that of any M16, where you would use a basic bullet tip, or you would use a standard four-prong A2 sight adjustment tool. Where the Knights, this is adjustable by a dial. You don't have to use any tools in the field for you to be able to use it. So this is a little bit more, this is easier to adjust. However, once you have these done, these are adjusted, you just leave them alone. There's no need to ever change them. So is there a benefit to one over the other? Not really. I mean, this is easier at first, I guess, but in the overall scheme of things, I definitely would say they're pretty irrelevant. Now, looking at we both have the same bipod on here. This particular one has the Knights armament, which gives you the standard loop for a sling swivel, which is locked in place. This one here has a arm scroll lever mount on it, which I prefer the arm scroll lever mount myself. But these are aftermarket. Yeah, you can get these whichever one you would like for it. I do have a pistol grip on the LMT. I don't have one on the Knights. We have the Magpul Type 2 covers on here as well, which gives you a really good gripping surface. We're going to go a little bit more close now into some other details. We're going to start looking at the lower receivers. First off, when we look at the Knights armament, we have an ambidextrous bolt release. This is not a bolt catch. This is a bolt release. On the right-hand side of the Knights armament, SR-25, you can only use this side as a release. If you want to lock the bolt open, you have to go to the other side. So we have a release. Ambi safety. And we have your standard location for your magazine release button. Now when we flip over to the left-hand side, you can see we have an ambidextrous magazine release button. And again, if you want to lock the bolt open, you have to physically push down the lower portion. And you have your standard safety, A2 grip, and you do have an oversized trigger guard for use with gloved hands. Now when we look at the LMT, again, this is not the most current version of the LMT. I was unable to get one for review. The current one is the Mars, or their ambidextrous lower receiver. They have a magazine release button. As you see standard, they have an ambidextrous safety, but there's also a bolt release and lock. On the Mars, which you'll see a photograph of the bolt release and bolt catch, it looks identical to the one on the left side. So if you want to lock the bolt open, you just push the lower portion of it, and it would function like a standard bolt catch would. So for as far as the lower receivers, they are now very equal. LMT was very late in the game to come out with a ambidextrous lower receiver. The first LMT MWS rifles that came out had basically just the ambidextrous safety and magazine release. And they pretty much stayed that way up until this past year. They released the Mars lower for the MWS at SHOT Show this year in 2018. Prior to that, the Mars was released a couple of years ago, and that was in the 5.56. That was developed along with their New Zealand contract for their rifle. And now pretty much most of the ones that Knights are selling now are their fully ambidextrous Mars lower receivers. So I definitely have to say the lower receivers, comparing to the newest, are certainly equal, to say the least. There's not really one benefit over the other. Triggers. Both of these come with a two-stage trigger. Both of them are around 4.5 pounds. The triggers are very, very comparable. I do believe Knights manufactures their triggers in-house, and LMT now does as well. They have wire EDM capabilities where they're able to handle that stuff where they originally couldn't before. But with the way LMT has grown, they've been able to bring more of that stuff in-house. Now looking at the stock assemblies. Now this normally comes with this stock. Now when we talked about earlier, LMT and Knights have a very close relationship. They do, LMT does manufacture parts from Knights. Now if you look at the Knights rifle here, this is a standard Lewis Machine and Tool receiver extension and the SOP mod stock. Now the rifle does come with a SOP mod stock for the LMT. However, I have the LMT DMR, designated marksmanship rifle stock, on this rifle. So this is something that you can get along with it, or you can get separately. This has some similarity in looks to the Magpul PRS in the fact that you can adjust your cheek weld as well as the back plate. Also, this slides onto your standard carbine receiver extension, unlike the Magpul, where you have to have a standard full-size stock and it slides on. By pulling downward on this ring right here with a puncher or whatever, you're able to adjust it in further or out. So this is a very, very adjustable stock. But again, this is a separate component. It does not come with the rifle. It's something that you can buy. This one will normally come the same way you see with the Knights. Now, part of the Mars program also for Lewis Machine and Tool is very similar. You do have a larger trigger guard for with gloved hands. LMTs always come with these ergo type grips, where the Knights comes with the standard A2 grip. Now, of course, for me, if these were my rifles, the first thing I'd be doing is I'd be putting a Magpul Naiad on there. It just works better for my hands. The lower receivers, in my opinion, I feel are very, very equal. There's only a very, very slight edge that I have to give to LMT over the Knights is the Mars version. You have a bolt release as well as a catch. It can go both ways, where the SR-25 is only a bolt release. But that's neither here nor there. For as far, again, lower receivers, I would say the same. For as far as the buffers, you do have an H3 buffer in the LMT. You have a similar weight in here as well. It's a proprietary Knights. Something else I want you to take a notice to. There is no forward assist on either rifle, which is the way that it should be. The SR-25 was developed, again, by Gene Stoner, the designer of the AR-10. He did not put a forward assist on there because it was not mechanically necessary. Stoner knew that the forward assist would cause far more many problems than it would ever solve. So both Knights and LMT have decided to not put the forward assist on there, which I absolutely applaud because I don't believe that it should be on there. I have a significant amount of trigger time on the LMT, and we're talking thousands and thousands and thousands of rounds. I don't have nearly as much trigger time with the Knights because I don't own one of the newer ones. But I can tell you in all the 308s that I've shot, and I've shot most of the ones out there right now, I have never had a malfunction with a 308 that would ever, a forward assist ever would have even assisted with. So we're going to start looking at some individual parts very, very close up right now. Now, first thing we're looking at is the charging handles here. As we can see on here, this is the Knights armament. You can see we do have a tactical latch on the front. However, there's no provisions on here to redirect gas away from the shooter's face. The LMT, on the other hand, you'll see a lot of similarities to the PRI gas buster. You'll see this angle right here. What this angle does here, this is a path for the gas to go out over the side here. And you also have these wings that hang down over the lower receiver around where the stock is, that also helps seal up the area so the shooter will get less gas back in the face. We have to give some points over to LMT for making a more sound suppressor-friendly charging handle. However, how relevant is that? Not quite sure, because the first thing I'm going to do is I will get rid of both of these, and I would buy PRI gas buster charging handles, which are the best charging handle in the industry for as far as making the rifle friendly for suppressors by blocking as much gas as possible from the shooter's face. Next thing we're going to look at is bolt carriers. Now, as you can see, these bolt carriers are very, very, very similar. Now, if you look at the top bolt carrier is the Knights armament, and the bottom one is the LMT. One of the major differences that you're going to see is the gas exhaust port hole. As you can see on the LMT, it's much larger and it's moved forward. Now, what that does is it assists on getting a lot more gas out more quickly that's not needed. Does it make that much of a difference? Not really. As you can also see, these are both chrome plated. They both have the exact same chrome. Now, I'm not going to really come right out and tell you that, you know, LMT makes the bolt carriers for Knights, but I guess you can draw your own conclusions. Now, if you look at the Knights, you do have additional sand cuts that are built in place for use, especially use in the desert. Now, if you look over on the bottom, we have the SR-25 here, and we have the LMT here. If you notice the bottom here, LMT will take any fire control group, even the standard mil spec one. The SR-25 will not. It has to have its own the thin match type hammer for it to fit, so you don't have as much of a compatibility there. So that's something else I guess I probably have to give over to LMT for as far as making it more modular, so you have the ability to use more different types of trigger mechanisms. Another difference we're going to notice is right here. Now, many of you who are familiar with the AR-15 M16 type rifles know that it's very difficult to insert a fully loaded 30-round magazine into an M16 type rifle. The reason is because when you push upward on the magazine, because you have the full pressure on the magazine, the top of the bolt has to push downward on that magazine stack. Now, if that is pretty much overloaded or it's full, it doesn't have a lot of room to move. That's why you're really having to push the magazine into place. So this pushes directly down on top. Now, if you look at the LMT, you'll see how we have a much smaller bearing surface here, and we have it cut at an angle here. This goes between the top two rounds of the magazine, so you do not have to take all that pressure that you do with this design here. So when the magazine is inserted, this goes in between the top two rounds rather than this pushing the top round down. So what this does is it enables you to take a fully loaded magazine and just pop it right in with no issues whatsoever. So I guess that's another benefit we have to go over with to the LMT. Now both have what I think is very, very important. Both have captive firing pin retaining pins. I don't understand for the life of me why this hasn't carried over to the 5.56 millimeter designs. This is a very smart thing to do. I've talked to several manufacturers and said, why don't you do this? And they just tend not to do it. Now, if you look at the carrier keys, both which are properly staked, LMT is known to use MIM or metal injected molded carrier keys, where Knights is using a standard M16 type machine one. This has always been an issue for as far as customers saying that the LMT is made cheap or it's not made as good, it's not as strong. And I'm going to tell you straight up that's not true. Both of the carrier keys you have here, MIM versus machined, if you were to have access to or to see the actual M16 TDP, these are both acceptable means for manufacturing. If MIM is done properly, there's no difference in quality. They are just as strong. So a MIM gas key is not any more or less durable than a standard mil spec. The only thing that I do say I like about the Knights is the fact that they chrome plate the inside. The MIM keys that LMT puts out don't have any chrome plating in the center. So now we're going to take a look at some bolts. Excuse me, I haven't had a chance to clean the LMT from its last shooting session. As you can see, the firing pins are identical, with the exception of this area up in here. What this area here was designed for is to place a firing pin spring over. The reason why you would want a firing pin spring is if you were to look at some of the match ammunition that's put out, they don't use a military-grade primer. Military-grade primers are significantly harder than the commercial ones, just because you have the free-floating firing pins in there. With some primers where you have severe primer sensitivity, the spring on here, what that does is it prevents the inertia from the possibility of having a slam fire. There's not a spring in this one. I don't know if Knights, they just bought this because this looks very similar to an Armalite firing pin, because the Armalite firing pins all do have the springs on there. So I don't know if that's just the way this was manufactured. This is an actual Armalite firing pin. I'm not sure, but that's the difference. That's what this area in here is for a firing pin spring. Our cam pins are identical. Now looking at the bolts, there's been a couple different generations of bolts for as far as the SR-25 is concerned and LMT is concerned. You're going to see a photograph here that's going to show the LMT Gen 1 versus the Gen 2. This is the Gen 2 bolt. The Gen 1 bolt is identical to that of the original M17 and SR-25, where you had a updated version of the ejector. The original SR-25 had an ejector which looked very similar to that of a standard M16. And the problem was it was not durable enough for military use. So when the SR-25 came on, the Mark 11s came online, they had to make a change to make a much stronger and more durable ejector, which you'll notice because it has sort of a brass color to it and it's larger. So that's the Type 1. Now that was used by both LMT and Knights in their original rifles. LMT was the first one to come out with the dual ejector, and as far as I know, they are the first manufacturer who had done it. Now you'll see this being carried over. Most manufacturers are doing it. You're seeing HK does it, Savage does it, obviously LMT. Everybody's pretty much doing it now. But originally what it was designed for was, with the 13.5-inch barrels, you had a much higher rate of fire, and what's happening is the cartridge case didn't have enough time to eject out of the ejection port prior to the next round being loaded in, so you would have a lot of stovepipe type jams. You didn't really see this problem with the 20-inch barrels, the 16-inch barrels, or the 18-inch barrels. It was primarily with the smaller ones. So this was done, and that problem has ceased. Now, one of the engineering change orders that Knights was able to get through was adding 2 ejectors. As you can see, we have 2 ejectors on the SR-25 as well, but their locations are different. Now, why they would do that different at locations, I don't know. You still have the same results as far as the ejection, so I don't see one being any more reliable than the other. If you also notice, you have a very similar profile for as far as the way the machining is done. Again, I'm not going to say that parts are made by LMT. I guess you can draw your own conclusions. They both use a one-piece gas ring, which is definitely more durable than the beer can gas rings you see on the other ones. And for as far as the locking lugs themselves, you can see a little difference in the geometry between the two. Not a lot. Now looking at the extractors, the extractors look virtually identical. However, with the LMT, you do see a crud groove that was machined into here. So any brass shavings or whatever, it has a place to go rather than the face of the extractor. The actual claws look about the same. The springs look about the same as well. So for as far as the bolts themselves, I would say they're pretty much equal. I would just probably give a little bit of an edge just because of the crud groove that's on the LMT. You will also notice with the extractor pins, you do have sort of a ring that's located in the center here. Quite frankly, I don't know what that ring is for. I saw it come on to LMT probably 4 or 5 years ago. They switched over to it. I'm not sure whether it's better or worse. It's just a difference that I had seen. Both rifles, especially initially, had all come with the SR-25 type magazine. Now, the SR-25 type magazine was basically modeled after the original AR-10 A&I magazine. As you can see, this is the original waffle pattern. The original AR-10 magazine was made out of aluminum. It was designed as a magazine that was to be disposable, just preloaded and then dropped and discarded. Well, when these magazines pretty much dried up very quickly during the assault weapon ban. There wasn't very many of them ever made to begin with. Some of the first rifles that were put out by Knights did utilize these magazines. Then they made their own, which you see here. This is a steel version, much stronger, much more durable, and extremely expensive. These things here cost damn near $100. Now, so far as I know, all of the Knights armament rifles still come with this steel magazine. LMT, their initial rifles came with it, but they later on had switched over to the Magpul P mags. Magpul P mags, again, which are a tenth of the cost. They're just as durable. I think they're even a little bit more reliable due to the fact that you have the polymer lips versus the steel lips. You have less friction on there, so it's a little bit easier. But for as far as durability is concerned, I think this is probably the best magazine in the market is the Knights. But again, it's a little cost prohibitive. So they both have come with these magazines at one time or another. Now, looking at the rear sights are nearly identical, adjustable for windage and elevation by a dot. The LMT utilizes an L-leaf, similar to that of a standard M16 AR-15. You have a aperture for long range and short range, where with the Knights you have one aperture. The sight on the SR-25 is a lot more slender. Knights has manufactured many different types of backup sights. They've gotten from bigger to smaller. So these are probably one of the smaller versions I've ever seen. They can be gotten in metric or in yards. Same thing with LMT. These can be gotten in metric or yards. They're ambidextrous, adjustable for windage on the LMT versus only on the right side for the SR-25. Both completely comparable. No problem whatsoever. Now, for as far as weight's concerned, the SR-25 is approximately 10 pounds. You're going to get a little bit more because you have a much heavier one-piece upper receiver with continuous aluminum. But I don't think that it's really that much more noticeable between the two. Both comparable for as far as weight's concerned, without issue. What we're going to do now is we're going to go put a few rounds through each of these. So now we're going to talk a little bit about what it was like to fire these things. Now, the initial video I didn't do any shooting, just because I guess I didn't really feel it was it was appropriate because of the difference in generations. These two here, we did shoot. These two here, there's two shooters. They had myself and there was Henry Chan from 9-Hole Review. Henry is a far more seasoned long-range shooter than I am, and I do have some issues just due to some health issues, arthritis and so forth. So I don't consider myself to be a sniper by no means, but we both shot, and we both pretty much got the same results. The first thing I want to talk about is the bullets to ammunition that we used. Now, talking about the SR-25 first, we used Remington 168 grain OTM. We used Black Hills ammunition 175 grain, which is basically the M118LR, Hornady 178 grain, both to hollow point match, and also Barnes 175 grain OTM. Now, with the SR-25, for the Remington, you had an average muzzle velocity of 2,560 feet per second. Black Hills 175 grain OTM, 2,518 feet per second. Hornady 178 grain, 2,510 feet per second. Barnes 175 grain, 2,633 feet per second. For the LMT, we just did Black Hills Federal and SIG. The Black Hills was 2,497 feet per second. The Federal 175 grain was 2,488 feet per second, and the SIG was 2,531 feet per second. Now we look at the targets. The targets were extremely comparable. Both of us were able to get a slightly tighter group with the LMT. I can't really explain why. We both were well sub MOA. You'll see the targets. For as far as the way the practical accuracy was between the two of them, I did not see one stand out over the other. Both of them were comparable. Now, for as far as reliability, both of them 100% reliable. I probably put 200 rounds or so through each rifle in several shooting sessions. Very lightly lubricated, no problems whatsoever for reliability. As you saw from shooting 100% reliable, you've seen the targets, only a slight difference between the two. Next thing I guess we need to talk about is price. You're looking at two very expensive rifles. You're looking at two of the most top-tier rifles, I think, in the industry. I think these are definitely the crown jewels for as far as precision 7.62 semi-automatic rifles go. I don't think there's anything that will beat these two. I do certainly want to mention the LWRCI Reaper. I have to say is also an excellent rifle, but for as far as guns that are out there that have been in use in combat, the SR-25 M110 been used by the U.S. military, the Mark 11 by SOCOM, the LMT, New Zealand, England, as well as many other countries. But these both have a lot of combat experience. Now, MSRP, now's the unpleasantness. The SR-25 you see here, the SR-25E2, you're looking at an MSRP of $4,900. The LMT, you're looking at a MSRP of $3,529. So you're looking at about, nearly $1,500 difference between the two of them. So what do you get for the extra money with the SR-25? I see very difference in practical accuracy between the two. When you compare the two for accuracy, reliability, they're equal. The performance is there. You do have some enhancements in the gas system on the SR-25, so you can certainly chalk up some more money for that. Now, that does not mean that the gas system on the LMT is not enhanced. It is. You definitely have to say that the LMT has some advancements to the gas system as well. What you have here is a pinned-on gas block, but your gas port is drilled on an angle. What that does is it prevents the static rate from speeding up once there's gas port erosion. So basically what that means is the durability and reliability is not compromised throughout the life cycle of that barrel. You do have more of an opportunity, obviously, for gas loss with the standard system as you do what Knight has. So, that's I definitely will say it'll be a major difference. You have straight gas tubes, I do believe, in both. The barrels, the barrel on this particular LMT is a chrome-plated 20-inch barrel. They also offer a stainless steel 20-inch barrel. So, considering that by rule the stainless steel barrels are a little bit more accurate than the ones with the chrome plating, perhaps this gun could do even better with a standard stainless steel barrel. Now, the LMT I've had out to 1,000 yards. I was shooting with Jeff Hoffman out at Black Hills a few years ago, and we were hitting even-sized steel targets at 1,000 yards with this rifle. Unfortunately, I never had the opportunity to fire the SR-25 systems at 1,000 yards. My personal SR-25, the furthest I ever went with it was 200 yards. I didn't have access to that longer of a range. So what benefits do we have with the SR-25? We have a gas system we have on there, and I would say pretty much the rest of the rifle is comparable. The LMT, what benefits do we have over that? The most significant and major is the ability to swap out barrels. That is the one thing that really separates the two of these rifles. And one of the first things we think about is due to the fact this is a removable barrel system on the LMT, is that going to affect accuracy for as far as precision shooting? And I have to say, judging by the groups that we shot, again, not just me, I actually relied more on Henry's groups than mine because he's an excellent long-range shooter. I saw nothing that showed any kind of compromising between the LMT and the SR-25. I don't see any major issue or difference at all between the accuracy, considering they were both so close. I really couldn't call one gun more accurate than the other. They both were excellent groups. They measured slightly smaller with the LMT, but that could have been the luck of the draw, luck of the day. I'm more anxious to tell you that I think these two guns are comparable for accuracy. So how much more is your ability to be able to change out your barrel? These are questions that you're going to have to ask yourself. You go with both of these rifles, you will not be unhappy. You're getting two of the most prestigious and highest quality rifles in the industry. Do you prefer the SR-25? I think that's really what it's going to come down to over the other. The LMT, do you care about having the ability to change out barrels? If that's something that doesn't interest you, certainly go with the SR-25. If you're just looking for dollars to cents, obviously you're looking at a significant lower cost with the LMT than you are with the Knights. But I think what a lot of this is going to come down to is preference. You can't say, well, one's got military service and one doesn't. No, they both do. You have a major military contract with the SR-25 for the M110. You have the SOCOM use of the Mark 11. Again, here you have foreign contracts. You have the L129 in Britain, where that was a very significant contract over there, considering that the British don't like buying Yank guns. That was a major ordeal there as well. New Zealand and many other places. So when it comes down to the price, there's LMT's definitely got them beat on price, but you have two precision rifles. These are not just mass-produced, thrown together rifles. So really, in my conclusion, you can't go wrong with either. You have to ask yourself what's most important to you. Are you a guy who's driven by price? Then obviously you're going to go with LMT. Are you a guy who's driven by name? You're probably going to want to go with the Knights. Are you one who's driven by performance? You can go either way. If you just want to keep it with one barrel, this is a good way to go. And there's also other options you have for configurations. You have shorter barrels for both. With the LMT, you have 4 or 5 different calibers you can go to. You have different stock assemblies. Both of them will accept aftermarket components except for the SR-25. The SR-25, you're restricted on what fire control groups you can use, versus the LMT, because of the way that bolt's undercut, you can use any fire control group in it. So there's a lot of factors that go in. As similar as these rifles are, the more they're different. So I really hope you guys enjoyed this. You're going to see a full video coming out on the M110. You're also going to see a detailed video coming out on the SR-25 in time to come. But I wanted to readdress this issue for as far as the comments we got on our first video. I'm very grateful that Knights Armament was able to provide me with some weapons to finally bring to you, their awesome systems. And I have much more information now that I have everything in front of me. LMT, unfortunately, I didn't have their latest version of their Mars 308 lower receiver. But as you guys have seen, I'm very, very fond of LMT. I've used their equipment for quite some time. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you do, please click like, please subscribe, even better share, and please consider donating on our Patreon. Thank you.